The wind howled like a banshee across the moors, battering the ancient stones of Harrington Manor as thunder cracked overhead. Inside, the grand dining hall flickered with candlelight, where Lord Reginald Harrington hosted his uneasy guests on this fateful night in 1932. Laughter rang hollow amid the opulent silver and crystal, but as the clock struck midnight, a piercing scream shattered the facade. In the locked study, Lord Harrington lay slumped over his desk, his face contorted in agony, a half-empty glass of port beside him. "Poison," whispered the shadows. Who among the gathered could have orchestrated such an insidious demise? The game was afoot. Chapter 1. The Arrival of the Little Belgian. The rain came down in silver needles, hissing against the windscreen of the Daimler as it lurched along the rutted lane that led to Harrington Manor. Hercule Poirot sat bolt upright in the back seat, gloved hands folded over the head of his malacca cane, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the glass. The storm had pursued him all the way from London. First a sullen drizzle at Paddington, then a petulant downpour over the Chilterns, and now, as the taxi breasted the final rise, a full-throated tempest that seemed determined to wash the very moorland into the sea. "Terrible night, sir," the driver ventured, squinting through the wipers. "Manor's a good mile yet. Hope you're expected." "Expected?" Poirot's voice was soft, precise, with the faintest roll of the Gallic R. "But of course, one does not summon Hercule Poirot on a whim, even in England." The driver grunted, unsure whether this was boast or fact. The little Belgian's reputation had trickled even into rural taxi ranks. Whispers of locked rooms, impossible alibis, and murderers unmasked by nothing more than the arrangement of cigar ash. Still, the man thought, peering at the neat figure in the Homburg and fur-collared coat. He looked more like a retired watchmaker than the terror of Scotland Yard. Headlights swept across a stone gatehouse, its pillars crowned with weathered griffins. The iron gates stood open, whether in welcome or carelessness Poirot could not yet tell. Beyond them, the drive wound through an avenue of skeletal oaks, their branches clawing at the sky like the fingers of drowning men. Lightning flared, illuminating for an instant the facade of Harrington Manor itself. A sprawling Tudor pile of mullioned windows, twisted chimneys, and ivy so thick it seemed the house had been woven rather than built. In that brief electric glare, Poirot noted the asymmetry of the east wing, newer stone, a recent addition, and filed it away. The taxi crunched to a halt beneath the porte-cochere. Before the driver could climb out, the manor's great oak door swung inward, spilling a rectangle of amber light across the wet gravel. A woman stood framed in the doorway, tall and slender, clad in a gown of midnight blue velvet that caught the candle glow like water. Even at a distance, Poirot marked the poise of her carriage, the unconscious lift of the chin that spoke of breeding and perhaps of secrets. "Lady Eleanor Harrington," the driver muttered, doffing his cap. "Poor lass. Married into more trouble than most." Poirot paid the fare with exact change and a murmured merci, then stepped into the downpour. The wind snatched at his coat. Rain drummed on the brim of his hat. Yet he paused on the threshold, tilting his face to the storm as though tasting it. Somewhere in the darkness, a peacock screamed, a thin, inhuman sound that set his teeth on edge. "Monsieur Poirot?" Lady Eleanor's voice was low, cultivated with the faintest tremor. "Inspector Japp telephoned from the village. We are relieved you have come." She extended a hand gloved in white kid. Poirot bowed over it with continental courtesy, noting the faint scent of tuberose and, beneath it, something sharper. Nervous perspiration, perhaps, or the ghost of brandy. "Enchanté, Lady Harrington. One is always at the service of beauty in distress." A flicker of something, amusement, irritation, crossed her face. "Distress is perhaps too strong a word. My husband is merely..." insistent that this house party proceed despite the weather, and despite— She broke off, glancing over her shoulder into the shadowed hall. "Come in, please. You must be drenched." The door closed behind them with a thud that echoed like a judge's gavel. Warmth enveloped Poirot, beeswax, wood smoke, and the faint mustiness of centuries. The entrance hall soared 2 stories, its hammer-beam roof lost in gloom. A suit of armor stood sentinel beside a vast stone fireplace where logs spat and crackled. Portraits glared down. Harringtons in ruffs, in periwigs, in the stiff collars of the Victorian age. Their eyes followed Poirot as he removed his hat and coat, handing them to a hovering footman whose livery hung loose on a frame too young for it. "Allow me to present the household," Lady Eleanor said, leading him across a threadbare Persian rug. "Though I fear we are not at our most sociable." From the shadows emerged a man in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, with the ruddy complexion of one who spent more time in the saddle than the drawing-room. His evening dress was impeccable, yet the knot of his tie had slipped, and his eyes, pale blue, bloodshot, betrayed a night or 2 of poor sleep. "Sir Arthur Harrington," he introduced himself, voice booming. "Younger brother to the lord of the manor and General Dogsbody. You'll be Poirot, eh? Jap's miracle worker." He seized Poirot's hand in a grip that would have crushed a lesser man. "Heard you sorted out that business on the Orient Express. Damned clever." Poirot extricated his fingers with a polite smile. "One does what one can, monsieur. Though I confess a country house in Derbyshire presents its own unique challenges." Sir Arthur barked a laugh that held little humor. "Unique? That's one word for it. Places falling to rack and ruin. My brother's grand ideas, colonial ventures, stock market gambles, have bled the estate dry, but try telling him that." "Arthur, please." Lady Eleanor's tone was sharp. "Monsieur Poirot has only just arrived." Before Sir Arthur could retort, another figure detached itself from the foot of the staircase. A man of Poirot's own height, but half his girth, with slick black hair and a smile that did not reach his eyes. His dinner jacket was fashionably narrow, his cufflinks heavy gold. "Victor Lang," he said, offering a manicured hand. "Reginald's partner in certain enterprises. Delighted to meet the famous detective. Though I must say your presence suggests our little gathering is more than a social occasion." Poirot's gaze flicked to the man's shoes. Handmade, London, with a faint smear of mud on the left toe. "One never knows, monsieur. Sometimes the most innocent weekend conceals the most intricate of dramas." Lang's smile thinned. "Quite." From the corridor came the shuffle of footsteps, and a maid appeared, barely 20, with a mob cap askew and eyes red-rimmed. She bobbed a curtsy that nearly toppled her tray of decanters. "Eliza will show you to your room," Lady Eleanor said. "Dinner is at 8, though with this storm—" She gestured vaguely at the windows where rain lashed the leaded panes like thrown gravel. Poirot followed the maid up the grand staircase, his cane tapping a measured rhythm on the worn treads. Eliza's hands trembled as she balanced the tray. A droplet of port slopped over the rim of a glass and stained her apron like blood. At the landing, a draft rattled the tall windows, and for a moment Poirot thought he saw a shadow move beyond the glass. Too tall, too swift to be a branch. He paused, but the maid hurried on, oblivious. His room was in the east wing, overlooking the rose garden, or what had once been a rose garden, now a tangle of thorns silvered by lightning. The chamber itself was baronial, a 4-poster bed swagged in faded damask, a fireplace large enough to roast an ox, and a writing desk beneath a portrait of a Harrington ancestor whose scowl could have curdled milk. Poirot set his valise on the luggage rack and opened it with the precision of a surgeon. From its depths he extracted a small leather case containing his toiletries, a silk dressing gown, and, nestled in velvet, a tiny mother-of-pearl revolver. One never knew. A knock at the door heralded Inspector Japp, windswept and apologetic. "Poirot, old man, beastly weather, thought I'd brief you before the gong." Japp was a blunt instrument to Poirot's stiletto, honest, dogged, and utterly devoid of imagination. Yet there was affection between them, forged in a dozen cases. Poirot waved him to a chair by the fire. "Tell me, mon ami, why does Hercule Poirot find himself in this Gothic edifice on a night fit for the Flying Dutchman?" Japp warmed his hands. "Lord Harrington's been receiving threats. Anonymous letters, dead crows on the doorstep, the usual melodramatic nonsense. But last week, someone took a shot at him while he was riding, grazed his hat. Local constabulary's out of its depth. Country bobbies more used to poachers than poison pen. His lordship insisted on this house party, says he wants to face his enemies under one roof. Mad as a hatter, if you ask me." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And the guests?" "Family and hangers-on, mostly. Lady Eleanor, devoted wife, or so she claims. Sir Arthur, chip on his shoulder the size of Gibraltar. Lang, business partner, slick as they come. Then there's the staff. Eliza the maid, been with the family since she was a girl. Old Tom the gardener, half wild, and a cook who's threatening to give notice if the grocer doesn't deliver by morning. Oh, and a secretary fellow, Miles Cavendish, supposed to be cataloging the library, but I've barely clapped eyes on him." Poirot stroked his mustache. "And the threats specific? Promises of justice for past sins, references to something called the Calcutta affair. Ring any bells?" Poirot's brow furrowed. "Calcutta, 1919 perhaps. A scandal involving opium smuggling and a missing Maharaja's ruby. But Lord Harrington was in the Guards then, not trade." "Curious." Japp stood. "Dinner in 20 minutes. His lordship's a stickler for punctuality. Best not keep him waiting." Left alone, Poirot surveyed the room once more. On the mantelpiece stood a porcelain shepherdess, her head slightly askew. He righted her with a fingertip, then crossed to the window. The storm had eased to a steady drum, but the garden below was a black void. Somewhere out there, he felt certain, eyes watched the lighted windows. He dressed with care. Starched shirt, white tie, the black coat that fitted like a second skin. In the mirror, his reflection stared back, small, neat, absurdly dapper. Yet the eyes were sharp as gimlets. "Eh bien," he murmured, "let the comedy begin." The gong sounded as he descended the stairs, a deep, mournful note that vibrated through the floorboards. In the hall, the guests assembled like players on a stage. Lord Reginald Harrington himself stood at the foot of the staircase, a portly figure in his 50s with a guardsman's mustache and the florid complexion of a man who enjoyed his cellar. His evening dress strained at the waistcoat buttons. A diamond pin glinted in his tie. "Monsieur Poirot," his voice was a parade ground bellow. "Welcome to Harrington Manor. Japp tells me you're the fellow to sort out this nonsense. Threats, bah! Probably some disgruntled tenant. Still, glad to have you." He pumped Poirot's hand with bruising enthusiasm, then turned to the company. "Shall we go in? Cooks threaten to serve the soup cold if we dawdle." The dining room was a cavern of oak paneling and candlelight. A long table gleamed with silver and crystal. At its head, Lord Harrington took his place. Lady Eleanor at his right, Poirot accorded the honor of his left. Sir Arthur sulked opposite, Lang beside him, Eliza hovering with the soup tureen. Old Tom had been banished to the servants' hall. His presence at table, it seemed, was a concession to the storm alone. Conversation was stilted. Lord Harrington dominated, boasting of rubber plantations in Malaya, of gold shares in Johannesburg. Lang nodded at intervals, his smile fixed. Sir Arthur drained his glass with unnecessary frequency. Lady Eleanor's gaze flickered between her husband and the doorway as though expecting an late arrival. Poirot observed. He noted the way Eliza's hand shook as she served Sir Arthur, spilling a drop of turtle soup that earned a muttered oath. He saw Lang's eyes linger on Lady Eleanor's pearl necklace, valuing it in the same glance that assessed the Sèvres porcelain. He marked the tremor in Lord Harrington's left hand when he raised his glass, the way his bombast faltered for a fraction of a second when thunder rattled the windows. The fish course arrived, sole in a cream sauce that Poirot suspected had seen better days. Between bites, he engaged his host. "Tell me, my lord, this Calcutta affair of which the letters speak, a mere coincidence, perhaps?" Lord Harrington's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Calcutta? Ancient history. Fellow officers, a spot of bother with the natives. Nothing to do with me." Yet his eyes slid away and Poirot saw the pulse leap in his throat. Sir Arthur snorted. "Ancient history? You ruined Colonel Forsyth's career over that ruby, Reggie. Man shot himself in the end." "Enough!" Lady Eleanor's voice cut like a whip. "We have a guest." Silence fell, broken only by the storm. Poirot sipped his Chablis, tasting more than the wine. Fear, resentment, and something darker like the scent of earth turned by a spade. The entree was roast pheasant, the bird's plumage still adorning the platter in a macabre touch. As Eliza carved, her knife slipped, nicking her thumb, a bead of blood welled falling onto the white meat. She gasped, but Lord Harrington waved her away with a laugh that rang hollow. "Clumsy girl. No harm done. Pass the port, someone." The decanter made its slow circuit. Poirot declined. Port after Chablis was a solecism, but watched as each guest poured. Lord Harrington added 2 lumps of sugar to his glass, stirring with a tiny silver spoon. The crystals dissolved, leaving no trace. Coffee was served in the drawing room, a chamber of faded brocade and ancestral portraits. A pianoforte stood in one corner, its lid closed like a coffin. Lady Eleanor poured from a silver pot, her movements graceful but mechanical. Sir Arthur cornered Lang by the fireplace, their voices low and urgent. Eliza cleared cups with downcast eyes. Old Tom's face appeared at the French window, rain streaming from his sou'wester, before vanishing again into the night. Poirot accepted a demi-tasse and retreated to a velvet settee. The fire crackled, shadows danced. He felt the weight of scrutiny. Curious, hostile, calculating. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the quarter hour. Lord Harrington consulted his pocket watch, frowning. "Midnight soon," he announced. "Time for a nightcap in the study, I think. Join me, Poirot? Got a brandy that'll make your mustache curl." Poirot inclined his head. "With pleasure, my lord." The study lay at the far end of the east wing, a masculine sanctuary of leather and oak. Bookshelves soared to the ceiling. A tiger skin rug snarled before the hearth. Lord Harrington poured 2 generous measures from a crystal decanter, handing one to Poirot. "To catching villains," he toasted, raising his glass. Poirot mirrored the gesture but did not drink. He watched as Harrington tossed back half the brandy in a single swallow, then reached for the sugar bowl on the desk, a heavy silver piece shaped like a pineapple. 2 lumps, plop, plop, stirred with the same tiny spoon. "Habit of a lifetime," Harrington said, noticing Poirot's gaze. "Sweet tooth, don't you know? My brother calls it a vice." He chuckled, but the sound caught in his throat. For a moment, his hand clutched the edge of the desk, knuckles white. "My lord, you are unwell?" "Indigestion, damned pheasant." Harrington straightened, forcing a smile. "Nothing a bromo seltzer won't cure. Now, about these letters." He moved to a safe concealed behind a portrait of a bewigged ancestor, twirled the combination. The door swung open to reveal neat stacks of documents and a velvet box. From it, he lifted a ruby the size of a pigeon's egg, blood red even in the lamplight. "The Maharaja's stone," he said softly. "Worth a king's ransom. And the cause of all this fuss, I shouldn't wonder." Poirot leaned closer, his reflection fractured in the gem's facets. "Magnificent. And dangerous, n'est-ce pas?" Harrington replaced the ruby, closed the safe. "Dangerous men covet dangerous things, Poirot. But I've faced worse than anonymous scribblers." He drained his brandy, set the glass down with a click that seemed unnaturally loud. For a moment he swayed, eyes unfocused. Then with visible effort he mastered himself. "Forgive me. Long day. Think I'll turn in. We'll talk more tomorrow." Poirot bowed. "Bonne nuit, milord." He left the study, pulling the door closed behind him. In the corridor, the house breathed around him, creaking joists, whispering drafts, the distant slam of a shutter. His room was dark, the fire burned low. He lit a candle, set it on the nightstand, and opened his valise once more. From a hidden compartment, he withdrew a small notebook and pencil. On the first page, he wrote in his neat continental hand. He paused, listening. From somewhere below came the faint tinkle of glass, then silence. Poirot closed the notebook, extinguished the candle, and sat in the dark, his mind racing like a precision watch. Outside, the storm redoubled, hurling rain against the windows as though determined to breach the manor's ancient walls. In the blackness, Hercule Poirot smiled. The game, as he had said, was afoot, and somewhere in this house of secrets a murderer prepared the first move. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Hall. The storm had not abated by breakfast, though the thunder had retreated to a sullen growl over the moors. In the dining room, rain lashed the tall windows in diagonal sheets, turning the view of the terrace into a watercolor blur of gray and green. Hercule Poirot entered precisely at 8:30, his patent shoes gleaming, his mustache waxed to twin points of military exactitude. The table was set for 5. The 6th place, Lord Harrington's, stood empty, its silver cover untouched. Lady Eleanor presided over the chafing dishes, her face pale but composed beneath a net of black lace. "Reginald is indisposed," she announced without looking up. "A touch of biliousness. He begs you will begin without him." Sir Arthur, already attacking a plate of deviled kidneys, gave a snort that might have been sympathy or satisfaction. Victor Lang buttered toast with surgical precision, his eyes flicking to the vacant chair and then away. Eliza moved like a ghost, refilling coffee cups with hands that still trembled from the previous night. Poirot took his seat, unfolding a damask napkin with a flourish. "Madame, one hopes milord recovers swiftly. Indigestion can be most inconvenient." He accepted coddled eggs and a single rasher of bacon, arranging them on his plate with geometric care. "Tell me, did anyone visit his lordship after I left the study?" Lady Eleanor's spoon clinked against porcelain. "I looked in before retiring. He was reading correspondence. Something about the Calcutta shipment. He dismissed me." Her voice was steady, yet Poirot noted the way her left hand worried the pearl ring on her right. Sir Arthur swallowed a mouthful. "I smoked a final cigar in the library, alone. The brandy decanter was empty. Reggie must have finished it." He shot a glance at Lang. "Though some of us prefer whiskey, don't we, Victor?" Lang's smile was thin. "Whiskey, brandy. What does it matter? I was in my room by 11 drafting cables to London. The storm kept me awake. I heard nothing." He lifted his cup, but Poirot saw the faint tremor in the saucer. Eliza leaned to pour Poirot more coffee. As she did, her apron brushed his sleeve. He caught the scent of cheap violet water and beneath it the metallic tang of fear. Her eyes met his for an instant, wide, imploring, then darted away. "Mademoiselle," Poirot murmured, "you were up late, perhaps? The house is large. One hears many things." She started so violently that coffee slopped over the rim. I went to bed directly after clearing the drawing room, sir. Cook can vouch for me." Her voice cracked on the last word. Lady Eleanor set down her cup with a click. "That will do, Eliza. Monsieur Poirot, more toast?" The meal concluded in brittle silence. As the others dispersed, Sir Arthur to the billiard room, Lang to the telephone in the hall. Poirot lingered, watching Eliza gather crumbs with a silver brush. When the room was empty save for the ticking of the ormolu clock, he spoke softly. "Petite, you are frightened. Why?" She froze, brush suspended. "It's nothing, sir, only his lordship was cruel sometimes, said things, but he's the master." A tear slid down her cheek, smudging the rice powder. "I never wished him harm." Poirot patted her hand with avuncular gentleness. "Bien sûr. But truth is a balm, n'est-ce pas? If you remember anything at all, you will tell Poirot." She nodded, miserable, and fled. Upstairs, Poirot found Inspector Japp in the corridor outside Lord Harrington's bedroom, arguing in an undertone with the valet. The man, a gaunt individual named Grimshaw, clutched a breakfast tray bearing an untouched cup of beef tea. "His lordship rang at 7, Grimshaw insisted. "Said he felt queer. I brought this, but the door's locked from within. Knocked till my knuckles bled. No answer." Japp's face was grim. "Poirot, we may have a problem." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The key?" "On the inside, according to Grimshaw. Windows 40 feet up, no balcony. Storms washed any footprints clean." Poirot tapped his cane against the parquet. "Eh bien, we break the door." Japp hesitated. "Without a warrant? Mon ami, a man's life may hang in the balance. Propriety must yield to urgency." Japp signaled the footman. Together they put their shoulders to the oak. The lock gave with a splintering crack. The room beyond was dim, curtains still drawn against the storm. A coal fire smoldered in the grate. On the vast four-poster, Lord Harrington lay fully dressed, one arm dangling, fingers brushing the rug. His face was congested, lips blue, eyes staring at the canopy in frozen surprise. Poirot crossed the room in 3 swift strides. He touched the carotid, nothing. Lifted an eyelid, pupil fixed. Sniffed the glass on the nightstand, port heavily laced with sugar, and beneath the sweetness the faint, unmistakable bitterness of almonds. "Cyanide," he said quietly. "Rapid, merciless. Death within minutes." Japp swore under his breath. "Locked room. No weapon, no intruder. Suicide?" Poirot shook his head. "Observe, the glass is on the left side of the bed, yet his lordship was right-handed. The decanter stands on the right. Someone placed it thus after he drank. And the key." He pointed to the door, where the key remained in the lock, turned from within. "A clever illusion." He moved to the window, flung back the curtains. Rain still sheeted down, but the latch was secure, the sill dry. No mud, no scuffs. He turned to the fireplace. The ashes were cold, but a scrap of paper curled at the edge, half-burned, bearing the words, "Justice for Calcutta." Japp bagged it carefully. Threats again, but who could get in and out? Poirot's gaze swept the room. The rumpled counterpane, the overturned chair, the safe behind the portrait, still closed. On the desk, a leather-bound ledger lay open to a page of cramped figures. Poirot bent closer. Debts, thousands owed to Lang & Co., a marginal note in Harrington's hand. Victor pressing for settlement, must stall. "Tiens," Poirot murmured, "the plot thickens." Downstairs, the household assembled in the drawing room at Japp's summons. Lady Eleanor entered first, her face drained of color when she saw the inspector's expression. Sir Arthur followed, reeking of brandy despite the hour. Lang's tie was askew. Eliza hovered at the door, twisting her apron. Japp cleared his throat. "Lord Harrington is dead, poisoned. The room was locked from within. A collective gasp. Lady Eleanor swayed. Lang caught her elbow. Sir Arthur's florid face turned the shade of putty. "Impossible," he blustered. "Reggie locked himself in every night. Habit from India, feared dacoits. Key on a ribbon round his neck." Poirot stepped forward. "Yet the key was in the door, monsieur, and the ribbon—" He produced it from his pocket, cut cleanly in two. "Found beneath the bed. Someone entered, poisoned the port, staged the suicide, and departed, locking the door behind them with a duplicate key or—" His eyes gleamed. "A simple trick." He crossed to the door, demonstrated, sliding a newspaper beneath, poking the key out with his cane, then drawing key and paper back under the gap. Voila. Child's play for one determined. Silence greeted the revelation. Then Lang spoke, voice steady. "But who? And why stage a suicide if the intent was murder?" Poirot smiled without humor. "To buy time, monsieur, to confuse, to point the finger at despair over debts." He gestured to the ledger Jap now held. "Or guilt over Calcutta, but Hercule Poirot is not confused." Lady Eleanor found her voice. "You're saying one of us—" "Précisément, madame. The murderer breakfasted with us not an hour ago." Outside, the storm broke anew, wind screaming around the eaves like a soul in torment. Somewhere in the house, a door slammed. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on each face. Shock, calculation, terror. The hunt had truly begun. Chapter 3. The scream in the night. The storm had not merely returned, it had declared war. By 10 o'clock, the wind howled like a living thing, rattling the leaded panes of Harrington Manor until the glass sang. Lightning strobed across the sky, bleaching the corridors white for heartbeats at a time before plunging them back into velvet dark. In the servants' wing, Eliza huddled beneath her thin blanket, counting thunderclaps like rosary beads. In the east bedroom, Victor Lang paced, a cigarette burning forgotten between his fingers. Sir Arthur had retreated to the billiard room with a decanter and a scowl. Lady Eleanor sat before her dressing-table mirror, brushing her hair with mechanical strokes, each one slower than the last. Hercule Poirot, however, was abroad. He moved through the house like a small, precise shadow. Cane silent on the runners, electric torch dimmed to a pinprick. He had changed into soft kid slippers. The patent leather lay neatly aligned beneath his bed. Methodical, he retraced the evening's geography. Dining room, drawing room, the fatal study, and now the locked bedroom where Lord Harrington's body still lay beneath a sheet, awaiting the police surgeon from Derby. The corridor outside the master suite was colder than the rest of the house. A draught seeped beneath the broken door. Jap had stationed a young constable there, P.C. Wilkins, barely 20, face blotched with acne and nerves. He came to attention at Poirot's approach. "Anything, mon brave?" "None, no, sir. Quiet as the grave." The boy flushed crimson. "Beg pardon, sir. Meant no disrespect." Poirot waved it away. "Graves are rarely quiet, mon ami, they whisper." He slipped past into the death chamber. The room smelled of coal smoke, brandy, and the faint sweetness of cyanide. Lord Harrington's corpse had stiffened. The jaw sagged, revealing a gold-capped molar that glinted whenever lightning flashed. Poirot stood at the foot of the bed, head cocked like a bird. He noted the exact angle of the dangling arm, the precise fold of the counterpane where the body's weight had depressed it. On the nightstand, the port glass, now bagged by Jap, had left a ghostly ring of moisture. Beside it, the sugar bowl, silver pineapple-shaped, lid askew. 2 lumps missing. Poirot lifted the lid with a handkerchief. 6 lumps remained, their surfaces pristine. No fingerprints in the granulations. The killer had been careful. He knelt, torch beam sweeping the rug. A single thread, midnight blue velvet, caught in the weave. Lady Eleanor's gown? Or coincidence? He tucked it into an envelope. Beneath the bed, the severed ribbon, yes, but also a faint scuff on the parquet as though a shoe heel had pivoted hard. Right foot, size 9, narrow. Lang wore 11s. Sir Arthur 10s and broad. Curious. A soft creak sounded from the corridor. Poirot extinguished the torch and glided to the door. P.C. Wilkins was gone, summoned perhaps by a call of nature or a trick. The passage lay empty, but at the far end, where the servant's stair descended, a sliver of light winked out. Someone had been watching. Poirot descended the main staircase, cane tapping a muted tattoo. The entrance hall was a cavern of shadows. The suit of armor gleamed like a headless knight. From the drawing room came the low murmur of voices, Jap questioning Grimshaw. The valet. Poirot veered left instead toward the library. The door stood ajar. Inside, candlelight flickered over leather spines and the green baize of the billiard table. Sir Arthur leaned over the cushions, cue in hand, lining up a shot that would never come. The decanter beside him was half empty. His eyes were red-rimmed. "Monsieur," Poirot said softly. Sir Arthur startled, the Q-tip skittering across the felt. "Poirot, sneaking about like a damn footpad. Can a man grieve in peace?" "Grief takes many forms," Poirot observed, stepping into the circle of light. "Some weep, some drink, some—" His gaze flicked to the scattered balls. "Attempt cannon shots at 2 in the morning." Sir Arthur slammed the cue down. "Reggie was a fool. Gambled away the estate on wildcat schemes, but he was my brother." His voice cracked. "Who could do this?" "That, monsieur, is what the little gray cells must determine." Poirot circled the table. "You were here last evening, you said. Alone?" "Played a few frames. Read The Sporting Life. Went to bed around 1. Sir Arthur's knuckles whitened on the cue. "Ask the butler, he locked up." Poirot noted the ashtray, 1 cigar stub still warm. "And this morning you breakfasted early?" "Couldn't sleep. Storm." Sir Arthur drained his glass. "Look, I've debts. Reggie held the purse strings, but murder, I'm no poisoner." Poirot inclined his head. "Naturellement. Yet debts are powerful motives, n'est-ce pas?" He moved to the French windows. The catch was unfastened. Rain had pooled on the sill. "Someone entered or exited here. Mud on the carpet, size 9, narrow." Sir Arthur paled. "Not mine." "Précisément." Poirot relatched the window. "We shall see." He left Sir Arthur staring into his brandy and continued his circuit. The kitchen was dark. The range banked low. A faint scent of carbolic lingered, Eliza scrubbing blood from her thumb. In the pantry, the sugar tin stood open, lid beside it. Poirot dipped a finger. Ordinary cane sugar. But the scoop lay askew, grains scattered. Careless or deliberate. Up the back stairs now, past the maids' rooms. Eliza's door was closed, but a thread of light showed beneath. Poirot paused, ear to the panel, sobbing, soft and hiccuping. He knocked gently. The door opened a crack. Eliza's face appeared, swollen with tears. "Sir?" "Pardonnez-moi, ma petite. A moment only." He slipped inside. The room was tiny, iron bedstead, washstand, a crucifix above the door. On the nightstand, a locket, open to a miniature of Lord Harrington, younger, smiling. Eliza saw his glance and flushed. "He gave it to me before, said I was special." Her voice broke. Then he laughed, said it was a joke. "I hated him, sir, but I never—" Poirot laid a hand on her shoulder. "The sugar bowl in his room, you filled it?" "Yesterday morning. Cook's rheumatism. 6 lumps, always 6. She wrung her hands. "But I never touched poison." "Calmez-vous. Who has access to the still room? Rat poison, perhaps." "Old Tom keeps the keys, but anyone could—" She stopped, eyes widening. "Mr. Lang was in the pantry this afternoon, said he wanted bicarbonate." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Merci, ma petite." Sleep now. Poirot protects the innocent. He left her clutching the locket and descended to the ground floor once more. The storm reached its crescendo. A gust shook the entire house and somewhere glass shattered. Poirot hurried toward the sound, the conservatory. The glass house doors stood open to the night. Rain swept in, drumming on the tiled floor. A pane near the door had blown in, shards glittered like ice. In the center of the chaos stood Victor Lang, coatless, hair plastered to his skull, staring at a workbench where pots lay overturned. "Monsieur Lang," Poirot called over the wind. "An unusual hour for horticulture." Lang whirled, face stark in the lightning. "Couldn't sleep, thought I'd check the orchids, Reggie's pride." He gestured vaguely at a row of cattleyas, their petals trembling. "This storm will ruin them." Poirot stepped carefully around the glass. On the bench, a mortar and pestle, white residue in the bowl. He touched it. Bitter almonds, cyanide. Lang followed his gaze. "Rat bait. Tom mixes it himself. Yet the orchids need no such protection." Poirot's voice was silk over steel. "And your shoes, monsieur, size 9, narrow, mud from the library sill, perhaps?" Lang's composure cracked. I walked the terrace earlier, clearing my head." "After poisoning the sugar?" Poirot's eyes glittered. "Or before?" Lang took a step back, heel crunching glass. "You can't prove—" A scream split the night, not the wind, but human, raw, piercing. It came from the upper floor, the direction of the master bedroom. Poirot and Lang ran. They met Jap on the landing, nightshirt tucked into trousers, revolver in hand. "The constable! Wilkins, he's gone! Door was open, body on the floor." They burst into the bedroom. P.C. Wilkins lay sprawled, a livid bruise on his temple. The sheet had been pulled from Lord Harrington. The corpse sat half upright, propped by pillows, eyes staring. On the dead man's chest lay a single playing card, the Queen of Spades. Poirot knelt beside the constable, pulse steady, breathing shallow. Stunned, not dead. The killer returns to the scene. Why? Jap's face was thunder. To retrieve something or to gloat? Poirot's gaze swept the room. The sugar bowl, gone. The port glass, smashed, shards glittering. And on the rug, fresh footprints, size 9, narrow, leading to the window. The latch was undone. Rain blew in. Outside, lightning illuminated the garden. For an instant, Poirot saw a figure, tall, cloaked, vanishing into the rhododendrons. Then darkness swallowed it. The hunt was no longer theoretical. The murderer walked among them, bold and desperate, and the Queen of Spades mocked from the dead man's breast. Chapter 4. Interrogations begin. Dawn arrived like a reluctant witness, pale and watery through the storm-scoured windows. The manor's great hall had been transformed into an impromptu tribunal. Heavy oak table dragged from the dining room, chairs arranged in a semicircle, Inspector Jap at the head with a fresh notebook and a face like a gathering thundercloud. 2 local constables flanked the door, truncheons polished but eyes wide. This was the biggest case their patch had seen since the sheep-stealing riots of '09. Hercule Poirot stood to one side, hands clasped behind his back, rocking gently on the balls of his feet. He had not slept. His eyes were bright, almost feverish. The Queen of Spades lay before him in a glassine envelope, its ink still faintly tacky. Someone had handled it recently. Jap rapped the table. "Right. No one leaves this house until the surgeon's done and the yard sends reinforcements. Poirot's in charge of questions. Speak when spoken to." Lady Eleanor entered first, wrapped in a dove-gray morning gown, pearls replaced by a simple jet brooch. She took the chair opposite Poirot with the dignity of a duchess mounting the scaffold. Her hands were steady now, but the skin beneath her eyes was translucent. "Madame," Poirot began, voice gentle, "last evening you looked in on your husband. What hour precisely?" 11:30, perhaps 11:45. She did not blink. He was at his desk, reading cables. I asked if he required anything. He said no, only that the Calcutta shipment had arrived short. He was agitated. Agitated enough to take his own life? Her chin lifted. Reginald was many things, reckless, proud, but never a coward. Suicide is unthinkable. Poirot inclined his head. Bien. And after? I took a sleeping draught and retired. Grimshaw can confirm the time. Jap made a note. Poirot's gaze flicked to the jet brooch, new since yesterday. Morning already? Or camouflage for something older? Sir Arthur lumbered in next, still in riding breeches, smelling of stables and whiskey. He dropped into the chair as though it offended him. Library until 1, as I told you, he growled before the question came. Cigar ash in the tray, Sporting Life open to the 3:30 at Doncaster. Check if you must. Poirot smiled thinly. We did. The ash is Havana, your brand. But the Sporting Life is dated yesterday and the race results are penciled in. Someone read it after the race, non? Yet you claim to have been alone. Sir Arthur's ears reddened. Might have dozed off? Time slips. Or someone joined you. Someone who left by the French window, size 9 boot prints in the flower bed beneath. I wear 10s. Sir Arthur thrust out a foot. The constable measured with a tape. 10.5, broad as a plank. Poirot waved it away. Précisément. We eliminate. Victor Lang glided in, immaculate in charcoal worsted, a fresh carnation in his buttonhole. He sat without waiting to be asked, crossing one leg over the other. Ask away, gentlemen, my conscience is clear. Poirot's eyes glittered. Your conscience, perhaps. Your shoes, monsieur, Italian, size 9, narrow last, mud from the library sill, orchid compost from the conservatory, and in your room. He produced a twist of paper. Grains of sugar mixed with potassium cyanide, enough to kill a regiment. Lang did not flinch. Planted. I was in the conservatory, yes, checking the orchids, as I said. The mortar was already there. Someone wishes to frame me. Convenient. Poirot leaned forward. You argued with Lord Harrington yesterday. Debts. £20,000 payable on demand. He threatened to dissolve the partnership. Lang's jaw tightened. Business. He needed me more than I needed him. The Calcutta shipment was insured for twice that. Yet the cable said short. A ruinous loss. Lang spread his hands. Ask the insurers. Eliza was last, apron starched to cardboard, eyes swollen. She curtsied to the table as though it were royalty. Ma petite, Poirot said kindly. The sugar bowl in his lordship's room. You filled it? Friday morning, sir. 6 lumps, always 6. Cook watched me. And the still-room key? Old Tom keeps it on a nail by the scullery. Anyone could take it. Jap leaned in. You were seen in the pantry at 4 o'clock. Mr. Lang says you brought him bicarbonate. Eliza flushed crimson. His lordship had heartburn after luncheon. I fetched it from the medicine chest, that's all. Poirot's voice softened. And the locket, Sherry? The one with his lordship's portrait? She touched her throat instinctively. He gave it me 2 years ago. Said I was pretty. Then laughed, called me a fool. I kept it to remind myself never to be a fool again. Tears spilled. Lady Eleanor looked away. Sir Arthur shifted uncomfortably. Poirot produced the midnight blue thread. From the death-room rug, your gown, madame. Lady Eleanor touched her sleeve, same velvet, same dye lot. I was in the study earlier discussing the menu, it must have caught. Or later, Poirot murmured, when you cut the ribbon round your husband's neck. She met his gaze steadily. I did not kill him. The interrogations circled like crows, each suspect parrying, revealing, concealing. By noon, the police surgeon arrived, a dour Scot with a bag of instruments. He confirmed cyanide, ingested in solution, death between 11:30 and 1. No defense wounds. The sugar bowl was recovered from the lily pond, smashed, lumps dissolved. Jap gathered the household in the drawing room. The inquest will be tomorrow. Until then, no one leaves their rooms after dark. Constables on every door. Poirot stood by the window, watching rain drip from the eaves. In his pocket, the Queen of Spades seemed to pulse like a second heart. He slipped out to the conservatory alone. The shattered pane had been boarded, the mortar scrubbed clean. But on the floor, half hidden beneath a fallen palm, lay a tiny mother-of-pearl button, torn from a glove, size small, a woman's. He tucked it away. Upstairs, P.C. Wilkins had regained consciousness, babbling about a cloaked figure and a smell of tuberose. Lady Eleanor's scent. Poirot returned to the hall as the grandfather clock struck 2. In the library, Sir Arthur was on the telephone, voice low and urgent. "Tell them the deal's off until this blows over. Yes, I know the ruby's here." Poirot stepped inside. Sir Arthur slammed the receiver down. "Calling your broker, monsieur? Or your accomplice?" Sir Arthur's face purpled. "None of your damn business." "Everything is my business now." Poirot's tone was mild steel. "The ruby in the safe, worth a fortune, insured?" "Reggie's obsession said it brought luck." Sir Arthur laughed bitterly. "Some luck." Poirot's mind raced. Ruby, debts, cyanide, sugar, size 9 boots, midnight blue velvet, tuberose, Queen of Spades. A pattern hovered just beyond reach. That evening, as the house settled into uneasy truce, Poirot gathered Jap in the study. The safe stood open, the velvet box empty. "The ruby is gone," Jap said grimly. "Taken after death, before we sealed the room." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then the murder was not the end, mon ami. It was the means. Someone needed Lord Harrington dead, and the stone in their pocket." From the corridor came the sound of a door closing softly. Poirot whirled, but the passage was empty. Only a faint scent lingered, tuberose and wet earth. The killer had struck again, silent as smoke, and the manor's shadows grew longer. Chapter 5. Clues in the shadows. Dusk fell early, the sky a bruised purple that bled into the manor's stone. Electric lights had failed in the west wing. Blown fuses, the butler claimed, so candles guttered in iron sconces, throwing pools of gold and pools of black. Hercule Poirot moved through the corridors like a chess master among pieces, pausing at each doorway, listening to the house breathe. He began in the conservatory, where the air hung heavy with wet earth and the ghost of orchids. The boarded pane had been pried loose again. Rain hissed through the gap. On the workbench, the mortar was gone, scrubbed or removed, but a faint ring of white powder remained. Poirot scraped it into a vial. Potassium cyanide, coarse crystals, not the refined powder used in the sugar. Old Tom's rat bait, then. He followed a trail of damp footprints, size 9, narrow, across the tiles to a side door that opened onto the kitchen garden. The prints vanished into mud churned by the constable's boots, but a single petal clung to the threshold. Cattleya, deep crimson. Lang's orchids. From the garden, Poirot circled to the library's French windows. The catch had been forced. Splinters of wood lay like broken teeth. Inside, the billiard table still bore the ghost of Sir Arthur's abandoned game. Poirot knelt, torchbeam raking the carpet. A cigar stub. Havana, yes, but the band was missing, torn away. On the hearth, fresh ash held the shape of a burned scrap. "Meet me midnight." The rest consumed. He sifted the grate with a poker, nothing more. Upstairs, the death chamber had been sealed with red tape, but Poirot had Jap's key. He slipped inside. The corpse had been removed to the ice house. Only chalk outlines remained. a macabre paper doll on the bed, another where P.C. Wilkins had fallen. The sugar bowl's absence gnawed at him. He measured the distance from bed to nightstand, 2 feet, 8 inches. A man sitting up could reach it easily. A woman standing would need to lean. He opened the wardrobe. Lord Harrington's suits hung in regimented rows, cedar balls warding off moths. In the breast pocket of a dinner jacket, a folded note, crisp and new. The ruby for the girl's silence. Midnight conservatory. No signature, but the ink was violet, Eliza's cheap stationery. Poirot tucked it away. The safe yawned behind the portrait, combination unchanged. Empty, yes, but a faint scratch on the dial. Someone had worked it by touch in the dark. He closed it, spun the wheel, then noticed the portrait itself. The ancestor's eyes had been gouged out with a sharp instrument. Vandalism or message? Down the servant's stair now, past Eliza's room. Door ajar, bed unmade, locket gone from the nightstand. In the kitchen, cook snored before the range, a bottle of cooking sherry cradled like a baby. The still-room door stood open. Inside, shelves of preserves, a locked cupboard. The key hung on its nail, but the hasp was scarred, pried and rehung. Poirot opened it. Rat poison tin, half full, label faded. He weighed it in his palm. Lighter than yesterday. A spoonful missing, perhaps 2. Back through the scullery, he found old Tom in the boot room, oiling a shotgun with hands that trembled from age or guilt. "Monsieur Tom," Poirot greeted. "The cyanide. You mix it fresh?" The gardener squinted. "Every spring. Prussic acid and sugar for the rats. Tin's been there since March." He scratched his beard. "Mind, I caught Miss Eliza nosing about last week. Said she wanted bicarbonate for his lordship's stomach." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the key? Anyone could lift it. Hook's right by the door." Outside, the kitchen garden was a quagmire. Poirot's torch picked out a trail of disturbed earth leading to the compost heap. He dug with a trowel borrowed from Tom's shed. 6 inches down, the sugar bowl, lid intact, 4 lumps inside, crystals fused harmless. Planted to mislead? Or discarded in panic, he returned to the house via the terrace. In the drawing room, Lady Eleanor sat alone, a volume of Shelley open but unread. Candlelight caught the jet brooch. Beneath it, a darker stain, ink, blood, on the gray silk. "Madame," Poirot said softly, "the ruby. Your husband showed it to me. A dangerous stone." She closed the book. "Reginald believed it cursed. The Maharaja swore vengeance when it was lost in Calcutta." Her fingers touched the brooch. "He kept it to taunt fate. Or to sell. The insurance alone would save the estate." Her voice was bitter. "But Victor, Mr. Lang, wanted it for collateral. They argued yesterday. I heard raised voices." Poirot produced the violet note. "And this? Blackmail?" Her eyes widened, genuinely or artfully. "Not mine. Eliza's hand, but I've never seen it." He left her staring at the paper and climbed to the attic. The space was a graveyard of furniture, cracked mirrors, moth-eaten tapestries, a child's rocking horse with one eye missing. Dust lay thick, but a path had been trod to a dormer window overlooking the conservatory roof. On the sill, a smear of orchid compost and a single pearl, small, perfect from Lady Eleanor's necklace. He pocketed it. Descending, he met Jap in the hall, face grim. Lang's room. Search turned up a ledger. Harrington was cooking the books. Lang's signature forged on loans that never existed. Enough to ruin them both. Poirot nodded. And Sir Arthur's telephone call? Overheard by the operator, mentioned a buyer in Amsterdam, offering 50,000 for the ruby, no questions. The pieces shifted, kaleidoscopic. Poirot retreated to the study, spreading his finds on the desk. Thread, button, petal, pearl, note, ash. He arranged them like tarot cards. He closed his eyes, letting the gray cells dance. The locked room, key under the door, yes, but the ribbon cut before death. The sugar bowl planted later. The ruby taken after the constable was struck. A conspiracy? Or a lone killer with multiple masks? A soft knock. Eliza entered, eyes red but resolute. "Sir, I must tell you, last night after you left my room, I went to the conservatory. I saw—" She swallowed. Mr. Lang and her ladyship together on the bench. He had the ruby in his hand. She was crying. Poirot's mustache twitched. "What hour?" "Near 1. The clock struck as I fled." He dismissed her gently, then stood at the window. The storm had paused. A thin moon silvered the garden. In the silence he heard it, a faint scrape from the library chimney. He descended swiftly. The fireplace was cold, but soot had been disturbed. Reaching up, his fingers closed on a small oilskin packet wedged in the flue. Inside, the ruby wrapped in a queen of spades, ink still wet. Footsteps behind him. He turned to find Victor Lang, revolver steady. "Looking for this, Monsieur Poirot?" The game had turned deadly. The ruby gleamed like a drop of blood between them, and somewhere in the house, a clock began to strike the hour. Chapter 6. Alibis unravel. The revolver did not waver. Victor Lang's face was a mask of sweat and candlelight, the ruby clenched in his left fist like a talisman. The library smelled of soot, fear, and the metallic promise of gun oil. "Step away from the desk, Monsieur Poirot," Lang said, voice low. "Slowly." Poirot raised both hands, palms open, the picture of compliance. "Monsieur, you mistake me. I seek only the truth." "The truth is survival." Lang's eyes flicked to the ruby. "This stone buys my passage out of ruin. Harrington's death was convenient." "Convenient?" Poirot's tone was mild, almost conversational. "Yet you risk everything by threatening Hercule Poirot in a house full of police." Lang's laugh was brittle. "Jap's men are half asleep at the doors. The storm covers sound. One shot and I vanish through the conservatory. By dawn, I'm on a trawler to Hull." Poirot took a small step sideways, placing the billiard table between them. "And Lady Eleanor?" "She was with you in the conservatory at 1 o'clock. Eliza saw you." "Does she vanish too?" Lang's jaw tightened. "Eleanor understands necessity. We planned to leave together after the ruby was in hand." "After murder, you mean?" Poirot's eyes never left the gun. "But the sugar was poisoned before midnight. You were seen in the pantry at 4. The timing does not fit." Lang's hand trembled. "Details. Arthur—" A crash from the hall cut him short. Jap's voice bellowed, "Poirot! Lang, what the devil—" The distraction was enough. Poirot dove behind the table as Lang swung the revolver. The shot cracked, plaster exploding above Poirot's head. Before Lang could fire again, Sir Arthur burst through the door, shotgun raised. "Drop it, you bastard!" Lang spun, but Arthur was faster. The shotgun roared. Lang screamed as the blast took him in the shoulder, the ruby spinning across the rug in a spray of blood. Jap piled in with 2 constables, wrestling Lang to the ground. The revolver skittered under the sofa. Poirot rose, dusting soot from his sleeves. "Merci, mon ami. Your timing is impeccable." Arthur lowered the smoking barrels, face ashen. "Heard the shot. Thought the killer was at it again." Lang writhed, clutching his shoulder. "Arthur, you were in on it. The forged loans—" "Shut your lying mouth." Arthur's roar shook the chandelier. "I never touched poison." Jap snapped cuffs on Lang. "We'll sort it at the station. Poirot, you all right?" "Parfait." Poirot retrieved the ruby, wrapping it in his handkerchief. "But the puzzle is not complete. Monsieur Lang's confession is selective." They hauled Lang to the drawing room where Lady Eleanor waited, white-faced. At the sight of the blood, she swayed. "Victor, what have you done?" Lang spat blood. "What we planned, darling, you wanted freedom." "I gave it." Her hand flew to her mouth. I never wanted murder. Poirot watched her closely. Yet you were in the conservatory at 1, with the ruby already taken. Explain, madame. She sank into a chair. Reginald showed me the stone after you left the study, said he'd sell it to save the estate. I begged him to wait. Victor and I, we needed time. He laughed, locked it away. Later, after he retired, I went back. The safe was open, the ruby gone. I thought Victor had taken it. Lang groaned. I did. Slipped in while Reggie slept off the brandy. Used the chimney flue to hide it until morning. Poirot's eyes narrowed. But the sugar was poisoned before you entered. Someone else prepared the trap. Old Tom shuffled in, summoned by the commotion. His gaze fell on Lang's blood and he crossed himself. Told you the ruby was cursed. Calcutta blood on it. Poirot turned to him. The rat poison tin. You said it was half full. Yet this morning it was 3/4. Someone replaced what they took. Tom scratched his head. Couldn't say, sir. Tin's been in the still room all week. Eliza appeared in the doorway, apron clutched in her fists. It wasn't me, sir, I swear. Poirot's voice softened. No one accuses you, Petite, but tell us again, when you saw Lady Eleanor and Mr. Lang in the conservatory, what exactly did you see? She swallowed. Her ladyship was crying. Mr. Lang held the ruby up to the moonlight, said, "This buys our passage to Paris." Then he kissed her. I ran. Lady Eleanor buried her face in her hands. Sir Arthur stared at her as though seeing a stranger. Japp rubbed his temples. So Lang steals the ruby after midnight, hides it in the chimney. But who poisoned the sugar before that? Poirot held up the mother-of-pearl button. This came from a lady's glove, found in the attic near the dormer overlooking the conservatory roof. Someone watched the theft. Lady Eleanor's head snapped up. Not mine. My gloves are kid, not pearl. Poirot produced the pearl from her necklace. This fell on the attic sill. You climbed to the roof, madam, to signal an accomplice? She shook her head violently. I was in my room. Sir Arthur stepped forward. Enough games, Poirot. I'll confess what I know. Reggie and I argued at 11. He threatened to cut me from the will entirely, said the ruby would go to charity. I stormed to the library, drank myself stupid, but I never went near his room. Poirot's gaze flicked to the shotgun. Yet you keep weapons loaded, and your boots... Size 10, as you saw. Arthur's voice was weary. I'm no killer. Japp's constable returned from the ice house. Sir, the corpse. Someone's been at it again. The left hand's been cut, ring finger severed. A collective gasp. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The signet ring. Lord Harrington wore a bloodstone signet engraved with the family crest. Worthless to most, but proof of identity to a forger. Lang laughed through pain. Arthur wanted the ring to seal fake documents. I refused. Arthur lunged, but Japp held him back. Lies! Poirot raised a hand. Assez, the ring is the key. Whoever took it needed Lord Harrington dead and desecrated. A message, perhaps. He led them to the ice house, a stone outbuilding behind the stables. The corpse lay on a trestle, sheet pulled back. The left hand was indeed mutilated, the stump crusted black. But on the sheet, written in blood, Queen takes king. Poirot's breath fogged in the cold. The Queen of Spades again. Our killer plays a game. Back in the drawing room, he assembled the clues on the pianoforte. 3 acts, he murmured. 1 murderer, or 3 motives? Lady Eleanor spoke, voice hollow. Reginald kept a second key to the safe in his signet ring. Hollow compartment. Whoever took the ring has access to everything. Poirot nodded. And the attic dormer aligns with the master bedroom window. A rope, perhaps, or a ladder from the stables. Japp barked orders. Searched the attic, the stables, the chimney flue again. Constables scattered. Poirot lingered by the pianoforte, lifting the lid. Inside, wedged between the strings, a bloodstone signet, the crest filed smooth, and beneath it a third queen of spades, this one smeared with orchid pollen. He closed the lid softly. The killer had returned to the scene thrice, each time bolder. And the game was far from over. Footsteps echoed in the hall, running. P.C. Wilkins burst in, face white. "Sir, the conservatory! Someone set fire to the orchids!" Flames licked the glass roof, crimson against the night, and in the heart of the blaze a shadow moved, tall, cloaked, vanishing into the storm. Chapter 7. The False Trail. The conservatory blazed like a funeral pyre. Flames roared up the iron ribs of the roof, devouring the orchid benches in a storm of sparks and steam. Japp's constables formed a bucket line from the scullery pump, water hissing into white vapor the instant it touched the fire. Poirot stood at the threshold, coat collar turned up, eyes reflecting the inferno. The heat was ferocious. The smell of scorched earth and burning petals clawed at the throat. "Too late!" Japp shouted over the crackle. "Whole place will go." Poirot's gaze swept the chaos. The cloaked figure had vanished, melted into the rhododendrons or beyond the walled garden. On the workbench, a single tin of paraffin lay overturned, cap missing. Accelerant. Planned. He stepped inside, shielding his face with a handkerchief. The mortar was gone, the rat-poison tin melted into slag. But on the floor, half-charred, lay a scrap of midnight blue velvet. Lady Eleanor's gown again, or another? A beam crashed behind him. Embers rained. Poirot retreated as the glass roof sagged, then shattered in a glittering cascade. Outside, the bucket line faltered. The fire had jumped to the ivy on the manor wall. Sir Arthur appeared, shotgun still in hand, face blackened with soot. "Bloody arson! Lang's work, even wounded?" Lang lay in the drawing room under guard, shoulder swathed in bandages, semi-conscious from laudanum. Impossible. Lady Eleanor watched from the terrace, shawl clutched tight. "The orchids, Reginald's pride." Her voice broke, but Poirot noted her eyes, dry, calculating. Old Tom stumbled up, coughing. "Fire'll take the stables next. Horses!" Japp barked orders. Grooms led panicked animals into the paddock. Poirot seized the moment. While chaos reigned, he slipped back into the house, up the servant's stair to the attic dormer. The window stood open. Rain blew in. On the sill, fresh scratches. Rope fibers caught in the wood. He leaned out. Below, the conservatory roof had collapsed inward. Flames licked the sky. A knotted rope dangled from the gutter, swaying in the wind. Someone had descended after setting the blaze. He followed the rope's path mentally, from attic to conservatory roof, then to the ground via the drain pipe. Size 9 boots again, narrow grooves in the soot on the sill. He collected a fiber, tucked it away. Downstairs, the drawing room had become a hospital. Lang groaned as the police surgeon probed his shoulder. Pellet wounds. No major arteries. He'll live. Poirot entered quietly. "Monsieur Lang, the fire, was it your signal?" Lang's eyes fluttered. "Fire? No, Ruby. Safe." Japp pulled Poirot aside. "Found this in the lily pond." He held up a sodden glove, midnight blue kid, mother of pearl buttons. One button missing. "Lady Eleanor's?" Poirot murmured. "Claims she lost a pair weeks ago. Servant confirms." Poirot's mind raced. The glove in the pond, planted after the fire to incriminate, or discarded in panic? He returned to the ice house. The corpse lay undisturbed now, but the blood message, "Queen takes king," had been smeared, deliberately blurred. Someone had returned yet again. In the library, the chimney flue yielded more. A second oilskin packet, smaller, containing the bloodstone signet, crest intact, and a folded note in violet ink. "Meet me at the ice house. Midnight. Come alone. Eliza's hand, but the E flourished like Lady Eleanor's monogram. Forgery? Poirot pocketed it and summoned the household to the dining room. The table was scarred from the morning's tribunal, candle stubs guttered in their sockets. Faces ringed him. Lady Eleanor pale, Sir Arthur sullen, Eliza trembling, old Tom smelling of smoke, Lang propped in a wheelchair, arm in a sling. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began. The fire was a distraction. While we fought flames, the killer moved freely. The ruby is safe. He placed it on the table, gleaming like a coal. But the signet ring was taken, then returned. Why? Sir Arthur spoke first. To forge documents. With Reggie dead, I inherit. A forged will cuts me. Out entirely. Lady Eleanor's voice was ice. Or to frame me. That note, he could be anyone. Eliza burst into tears. I never wrote it. My stationery's in the kitchen drawer. Anyone could take it. Old Tom scratched his beard. Icehouse door was jemmied. Crowbar from my shed. Poirot produced the rope fiber. From the attic dormer, someone climbed down to the conservatory roof, set the fire, descended to the garden. Size 9 boots, Mr. Lang's size, yet he was shot before the blaze began. Lang lifted his head. I was in my room. Ask the constable. He guarded me. The constable nodded. Never left my sight. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Then the killer wore Mr. Lang's boots, or had an accomplice. He laid out the false trail like a card sharp. All to point at Lady Eleanor, he concluded, but the true killer is cleverer. Jap's men returned from the stables. A ladder missing, returned soaked, a coil of rope gone. The attic search yielded a woman's kid slipper, size 5, heel snapped, hidden behind a trunk. Lady Eleanor's foot was a delicate 4, Eliza's 6. Whose then? Jap demanded. Poirot's mind flashed to the cook, rheumatism but sturdy, the housemaid on leave, the secretary Miles Cavendish, unseen since arrival. He snapped his fingers. The secretary, where is Monsieur Cavendish? A search ensued. Cavendish's room was tidy, bed unslept in. On the desk, a half-written catalogue of the library, ink still wet. In the wastebasket, a torn railway ticket, Derby to London dated yesterday, and beneath the blotter, a queen of spades, this one pristine, ink dry. Poirot held it to the light. Our killer leaves calling cards like a conjurer, but this one is old, paper yellowed. From the Manor's games drawer, perhaps. He led them to the games room. The card drawer hung open, the queen of spades missing from a 1912 piquet deck. Someone had planned this for weeks. Back in the dining room, tension crackled. Lady Eleanor spoke suddenly. There's a secret passage from the library to the ice house. Reginald showed me once, behind the paneling. He said it was for smuggling brandy in the old days. Poirot's eyes lit. Voila! The locked room explained. The killer entered via the passage, poisoned the sugar, cut the ribbon, exited the same way. The key under the door, a blind. Jap's men pried the library paneling. A narrow door yawned, stairs descending into damp stone. At the bottom, the ice house, a side entrance hidden by ivy. Footprints in the dust, size 9, narrow, led to the trestle where the corpse had lain. A smear of blood on the wall. The severed finger cauterized with a hot blade to stop the flow. Poirot knelt. The ring was cut here, the message written. Then the killer returned via the passage to the library, hid the ruby in the flue, and set the conservatory blaze to cover tracks. Sir Arthur's face was gray. But who? Poirot produced the kid slipper. Size 5. The cook? No. Her feet are boats. The housemaid? On leave. Then who? A scream from the hall. Eliza burst in, eyes wild. Cook's gone. Kitchen's empty. And there's blood on the chopping block. They ran. The kitchen was chaos, overturned pots, flour strewn like snow. On the block, a single finger, Lord Harrington's ring gone, wrapped in a queen of spades. And on the wall, scrawled in blood, the game continues. Poirot stared at the message, the ruby cold in his pocket. The killer was not merely clever, they were playing with him. And the next move was already in motion. Chapter 8. Secrets Unearthed. The finger lay on the butcher's block like a pale, obscene offering, the queen of spades pinned beneath it with a cleaver. Blood had pooled, thick and dark, already clotting in the chill of the kitchen. Cook was nowhere. Her apron hung on a hook, cap askew, a half-peeled potato abandoned in the sink. The back door stood open to the night. Rain slanted in, washing crimson rivulets across the flagstones. Poirot knelt, careful not to disturb the scene. The severed digit had been cauterized with a heated blade, kitchen knife perhaps held to the range. No arterial spray, the amputation was post-mortem, done in the ice house and transported here. He lifted the card with tweezers. The ink was fresh, the same violet as Eliza's stationery, but the hand steadier, more practiced. A flourish on the cue. Lady Eleanor's monogram again, or another forgery? Jap arrived, breathless, constables at his heels. Cook's vanished. Searched the grounds, no sign. Blood trail ends at the scullery pump. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Pump water would wash evidence, but why the finger here? A taunt. The killer wants us to chase shadows. Sir Arthur lumbered in, shotgun reloaded. This is madness. First the ruby, now butchery. Précisément, Poirot cut in. Madness with method. The ruby is safe. The ring returned, the finger displayed. Our killer stages a grand guignol. Lady Eleanor appeared in the doorway, shawl clutched like a shield, her gaze fixed on the finger. She swayed but did not faint. Reginald's signet. It held the second safe key. Whoever has it can access the Calcutta papers, proof of the smuggling. Lang was wheeled in, pale but lucid. The papers name me as Harrington's partner in the opium trade. If they surface, I'm ruined, or worse. Poirot turned to him. Yet you stole the ruby, hid it in the flue. Why return it? Lang's laugh was bitter. I didn't. Someone took it from my pocket while I lay bleeding. The surgeon confirmed. Laudanum dose was heavy. He was unconscious within minutes. 3 actors, or one with perfect timing? He led them to the ice house via the secret passage. The stone stairs were slick with damp. Cobwebs clung to their hair. At the bottom, the trestle was empty. The corpse had been moved. A trail of blood led to a side door, forced open. Outside, churned mud and a single kid's slipper. Mate to the attic find, heel snapped. Jap's torch picked out a bundle beneath the ivy. Cook, bound and gagged, eyes wide with terror. She mumbled through the cloth. They freed her. Cloaked figure, she gasped. Hit me from behind, woke up here. Saw him carry his lordship's body toward the crypt. The family crypt lay beyond the rose garden, a squat mausoleum of weathered marble. The iron gate hung ajar. Inside, candles guttered in niches. The air reeked of tallow and decay. Lord Harrington's corpse lay on the central slab, sheet gone, arms arranged like a crusader. The severed finger had been replaced, stitched crudely with black thread. On the chest, a fresh queen of spades, pinned with the bloodstone signet, and carved into the marble above, the queen buries the king. Poirot's breath frosted. A tableau. The killer completes the game. Lady Eleanor touched the stitching, revulsion mingling with fascination. Who would desecrate? Sir Arthur's voice cracked. The Calcutta curse. The Maharaja swore Harrington blood would pay. Old Tom, trailing behind, crossed himself. Crypt's been locked since the old lord died. Keys in the chapel. Poirot examined the gate. Scratches fresh. Lock picked with a knife. Inside, candle wax pooled. Beeswax, scented with tuberose. Lady Eleanor's again. He lifted the signet. The hollow compartment was empty, no second key. The killer has what they came for. Back in the house, Poirot assembled the suspects in the chapel, a cold stone box of pews and stained glass. Moonlight filtered through the rose window, painting their faces crimson and gold. "Mes amis," he began, "the false trails end here. The glove, the rope, the forged notes, all to distract. The true path is simpler." He laid the signet on the altar. Lord Harrington was poisoned with cyanide in his sugar, his unique habit. The killer knew his routine. Entered via the passage, cut the ribbon to stage locked room suicide, exited the same way. The ruby was taken to lure us into theft motive. The finger, the crypt, all theater to terrify. Lang spoke weakly. Then who? Poirot's gaze swept them. Someone with access to the passage, the still room, the crypt key. Someone who stitched the finger with surgical precision. Cook, bandaged now, shook her head. "Not me. I can't abide blood," Eliza sobbed. "I'd never—" Poirot produced the kid slipper. "Size 5. Not Lady Eleanor's 4, not Eliza's 6. Whose?" Silence. Then Sir Arthur cleared his throat. "There's a girl, Reggie's byblow, born in Calcutta, sent to England. Lives in the village. Name's Rose. Small feet. Works as a seamstress." Lady Eleanor gasped. "Reginald never—" "He did," Arthur said bitterly. "Supported her secretly. The ruby was to be hers. His bastard's inheritance." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Rose? The missing housemaid? On leave?" Japp nodded. "Rose Cavendish, the secretary's sister. Both employed here 6 months." The chapel door creaked. Miles Cavendish stood in the shadows, coat dripping, a valise in hand. "Looking for me?" Poirot smiled without warmth. "Monsieur Cavendish, or should I say Rose's brother. You catalogued the library, learned the passage. She stitched the finger. Seamstress's skill. Together you planned revenge for Calcutta." Cavendish's face twisted. "The Maharaja was our grandfather. Harrington stole the ruby, ruined him. Rose was to inherit nothing, bastard daughter of a thief. We waited years." He dropped the valise. Inside, the Calcutta papers, the second safe key, a vial of cyanide, and a Queen of Spades deck, half the queens missing. Japp moved to cuff him, but Cavendish pulled a derringer. "Not yet." Poirot stepped forward. "You poisoned the sugar, Miles. Rose set the fire, planted the glove. But the crypt, why the desecration? To shame him," Cavendish spat, "as he shamed our blood." Lady Eleanor spoke, voice steel. "And Lang? The shooting?" "Lang was greedy," Cavendish said. "Saw Rose with the ruby, tried to take it. Arthur's shotgun was convenient." Sir Arthur paled. "I thought he was the killer." Poirot raised a hand. "Assez. The game ends. Rose?" Cavendish's defiance cracked. "She's gone. Took the midnight train with the papers. You'll never—" A whistle shrilled outside, the village constable, lantern swinging. Rose stood in the churchyard, wrists bound, face tear-streaked. "I couldn't leave him, Miles, not after everything." The siblings were led away. The ruby glinted on the altar, innocent now. Poirot closed the signet's compartment with a click. "Order restored," he murmured. But in the crypt, the carved words remained. "The Queen buries the King. Some truths," he reflected, "outlast justice." Chapter 9. The Confrontation. The chapel bells had tolled midnight, but the house refused to sleep. Candles burned low in the great hall, their flames trembling as if the manor itself held its breath. Japp had taken the Cavendish siblings to the village lockup, but Poirot insisted on one final gathering. The suspects, those who remained, were summoned to the drawing room at 1 o'clock. No constables this time, no shotguns. Only the truth, naked and merciless. Poirot stood before the marble fireplace, the ruby in his palm catching the firelight like a living coal. The signet ring lay beside it on the mantel, the bloodstone dull by comparison. Behind him, the portrait of the gouged-eyed ancestor glared down, as though offended by the proceedings. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, voice soft yet carrying to every corner. "The play is nearly done. The curtain falls. But before the actors depart, Hercule Poirot must name the hand that moved the pieces." Lady Eleanor sat rigid on the settee, jet brooch, pinned like a wound. Sir Arthur slumped in an armchair, brandy untouched for once. Eliza hovered by the door, apron twisted into a rope. Old Tom leaned against the wall, cap in hands, eyes on the floorboards. Victor Lang, shoulder bandaged, occupied a straight-backed chair, defiance flickering despite the pain. Poirot turned the ruby slowly. "We have chased phantoms, cursed rubies, Calcutta vengeance, bastard daughters, forged queens of spades, clever distractions. But the murder was intimate, personal. Born in this house, not a distant colony." He placed the ruby down. Lord Harrington died of cyanide in his sugar, his unique vice. The killer knew his habits, his room, his safe. Entered via the secret passage, cut the ribbon, staged the locked room. Took the ruby to mislead, severed the finger to terrify, burned the conservatory to erase evidence. But one detail betrayed them. He produced the kid's slipper, heel snapped. Size 5. Rose Cavendish's, yes, but borrowed. Worn by someone smaller, someone who limped to sell the injury. Lady Eleanor's breath hitched. "I told you, my feet are 4s. "Précisément," Poirot said. "Yet the attic dormer showed scuff marks, left foot dragging, and the rope fibers caught on your pearl necklace, madam. One pearl missing found on the sill." She touched her throat instinctively. I lost it days ago." Poirot's smile was wintry. "No, you climbed to the attic after the murder to watch the conservatory, to signal your accomplice. But the accomplice was never Rose or Miles. They were pawns." Sir Arthur stirred. "Then who the devil?" Poirot turned to Eliza. "Ma petite, you saw Lady Eleanor and Mr. Lang in the conservatory at 1. But what did you hear?" Eliza's voice trembled. "Her ladyship said, 'It's done. The sugar took him.'" Mr. Lang replied, "The ruby's ours now." Then they kissed. Lang surged forward, wincing. "Lies! I took the ruby after death." "Non," Poirot cut in. "You took it at 12:15, hid it in the flue, but the sugar was poisoned at 11. Lady Eleanor prepared it earlier, knowing her husband's habit. She visited him at 11:30, watched him stir 2 lumps into his brandy, then left via the passage." Lady Eleanor rose, magnificent in denial. "Absurd. I was in my room." "With a sleeping draught?" Poirot produced a small brown bottle from his pocket, laudanum, half empty. "Grimshaw saw you take it at 11. Yet your pillow showed no head mark this morning. You never slept." He paced, relentless. "You needed freedom, madame. A husband who mocked your barrenness, who flaunted mistresses, who squandered the estate. Victor Lang offered escape, Paris, a new life. But the ruby was the price. You planned to steal it together, frame Sir Arthur with the forged will. But Reginald changed the combination that night, after showing me the stone. You improvised." Lang stared at her, betrayal dawning. "Eleanor, you said it was suicide, that he'd taken the poison himself over the debts." She laughed, brittle. "Men are such fools. You were to take the ruby and run. I'd inherit, follow later. But you hesitated." Poirot continued. "The finger, the crypt, the queens of spades, your flourishes, madam. The Calcutta curse was a blind using the Cavendish's real grievance. You fed Miles the passage map, the stillroom key. Rose set the fire on your signal, thinking she avenged her blood. You stitched the finger with your embroidery silk, black, to match the grief you never felt." He held up a reel of silk, snipped end matching the crypt thread. From your work basket. Sir Arthur found his voice. But I shot Lang. Because she told you he was the killer, Poirot said. Planted the ruby on him while he bled. You were her shield, monsieur. The loyal brother, quick to anger, slow to reason. Arthur's face crumpled. She's family. Family she despised, Poirot said gently. The will left you a pittance. She forged the new one. Your signature practiced from old letters. The Cavendishes were to take the blame, vanish with the Calcutta papers. You'd hang for Lang's murder if needed. Lady Eleanor's composure cracked. You cannot prove. May see. Poirot produced the violet note from the flue. Your hand, madam, the E flourish, the tuberose scent on the paper. Eliza's ink, but your pen. And the pearl, he let it roll across the rug. Matches your necklace exactly. The jeweler in Derby confirmed the clasp repair last month. She lunged for the ruby. Poirot stepped aside. She sprawled across the hearthrug. Lang turned his face away. Eliza began to cry. Jap entered quietly, no cuffs, but 2 constables behind him. Lady Eleanor Harrington, I arrest you for the murder of your husband. She rose, chin high, but her eyes were dead. He deserved it, every lash of his tongue, every slight. I was his ornament, not his wife. As the constables led her out, Poirot addressed the room. The Cavendishes will be released, pawns, not knights. Mr. Lang faces charges of theft and conspiracy, but not murder. Sir Arthur, grieve for the sister you thought you knew. Arthur sank to his knees, sobbing like a child. Old Tom shuffled forward, placed a gnarled hand on his shoulder. Eliza fled to the kitchen, her sobs echoing. Poirot gathered the ruby, the ring, the silk. In the silence, the fire popped, sending up a shower of sparks. He looked at the gouged portrait. Eh bien, the queen is taken, the board is clear. But as he turned to leave, his foot brushed something beneath the rug, a final queen of spades face down. He flipped it with his cane. The back was blank, but written in fresh blood. Checkmate, monsieur. Poirot's mustache twitched. He slipped the card into his pocket. Somewhere in the house, a door closed softly. The game, it seemed, had one move left. Chapter 10. The Final Revelation. The drawing-room door had barely closed behind Lady Eleanor when Poirot felt the chill. Not from the dying fire, but from the card in his pocket, the Queen of Spades with its blood inscription, Checkmate, monsieur. He had dismissed the household. Jap had taken Eleanor away in the dawn motor. Yet the house felt watchful, as though the walls themselves leaned in to listen. He stood alone beneath the gouged portrait, turning the card in his gloved fingers. The blood had dried to a rust-brown flake, fresh, yet not Lord Harrington's. Too bright, too thin. Chicken blood, perhaps, from the kitchen. A final jest. None, he murmured. Not chicken, theatrical. The rug beneath his feet was Persian, ancient, its reds faded to bruise. He knelt, cane probing the fringe. There, a corner lifted, revealing a sliver of white. Another card. He drew it out carefully. The Queen of Spades again, but this one was pristine, the back embossed with the Harrington crest. And on the face, in violet ink, you missed the real queen. Poirot's mustache bristled. He crossed to the mantel, rang the bell. Grimshaw appeared, face gray with exhaustion. The household, where are they? Sir Arthur's in the library, sir, drowning sorrows. Eliza's packing to leave for her sisters. Old Tom's in the stables. Mr. Lang sedated upstairs. Bien. Bring Sir Arthur and Eliza. We are not finished. While he waited, Poirot examined the portrait. The gouged eyes, done with a button hook, he had thought, but the scratches were deliberate, forming tiny symbols, a ruby, a crown, a noose, a child's code, or a woman's. Sir Arthur entered first, swaying, brandy flask in hand. "What now, Poirot? Haven't we suffered enough?" Eliza followed, valise in hand, eyes swollen. "Sir, the cart's waiting. I can't stay in this house of death." Poirot raised a hand. "Un moment. The game has one last turn." He placed the new queen on the pianoforte. Lady Eleanor confessed, beautifully, too beautifully. She implicated herself in murder, yes, but the details, they fit like a glove one size too large. Arthur frowned. Meaning? Meaning she protected someone, the real killer. Eliza dropped her valise with a thud. Her ladyship? But she... Non, ma petite. Not her ladyship. Poirot's voice softened. You. The word hung in the air like cyanide gas. Eliza's knees buckled. She caught the back of a chair, knuckles white. Me? I loved him, sir, even when he scorned me. Précisément. Poirot circled her slowly. You loved him enough to bear his child in secret. You loved him enough to poison his sugar when he laughed at your tears, when he threatened to send you away penniless. You loved him enough to stage this entire spectacle, so that Lady Eleanor would take the blame. Arthur gaped. The girl? But she's Lord Harrington's natural daughter, Poirot finished. Born in Calcutta, raised in the village, placed here as maid to watch her father. The locket was not a gift, it was recognition. He knew, and he mocked her for it. Eliza's face crumpled. He said I was dirt beneath his boots, that the ruby would go to legitimate heirs. I heard him tell her ladyship, after you left the study, monsieur. I was listening at the door. Poirot nodded. You took the cyanide from the still room, old Tom's key, easy for the trusted maid. You poisoned the sugar at 11, knowing his habit. You cut the ribbon with embroidery scissors, your scissors found in the passage. He produced them from his pocket, black silk still threaded in the eye. You staged the locked room, hid in the passage, emerged later to plant clues. The queens of spades, from the games drawer, your childhood deck. You learned the trick from Rose Cavendish, shared secrets of bastard daughters. Eliza sank to the rug. I wanted him to suffer, like he made me suffer. The finger, I took it to the crypt, stitched it back with Mama's thread, to show him, even in death, I could mend what he broke. Arthur poured brandy with shaking hands. And Eleanor? She suspected, Poirot said. When she found you in the conservatory with Lang, holding the ruby you'd taken via the passage, she understood. She confessed to shield you. A mother's love, twisted but true. Eliza laughed through tears. She said I was the daughter she could never have, that we'd frame the Cavendishes, let Lang rot, and I'd inherit through her, but you saw through it. Poirot's eyes were gentle. The slippers, size 6, but you wore Lady Eleanor's 4s in the attic, limping to mislead. The pearl was yours, strung on your rosary, lost in panic. The blood on the final card, your own. Pricked finger, the tuberose scent, not hers but yours, from the violet water you saved for Sundays. He knelt beside her. Ma pauvre petite, you played well. But Hercule Poirot sees the order beneath chaos. Eliza looked up, eyes ancient in her young face. Will they hang me? Transportation, perhaps, or bedlam. The law is kinder to women now. Arthur drained his glass. Reggie, my brother, dead by his own bastard. Poirot stood. He died by his sins. The ruby returns to the estate. You, monsieur, will administer it. For Eliza's child, perhaps. A new generation. From the hall came Japp's voice. Poirot, motors here. Lady Eleanor's asking for you. Poirot paused at the door. Tell her. The queen has fallen. But the board endures. He stepped into the corridor. Dawn light filtered through the mullioned windows, painting the suit of armor gold. Outside, the storm had passed. The moors steamed in weak sunlight. Old Tom waited by the taxi, cap in hand. All done, sir? Oui, Tom, the ghosts are laid. As the Daimler pulled away, Poirot looked back. Harrington Manor stood silent, ivy stirring in the breeze. Somewhere inside, a child would be born to scandal and wealth. The ruby would gleam in a new setting. And the queens of spades, those he would burn. But in his pocket, the final card remained. He drew it out, studied the blank back, then smiled. Checkmate, he whispered to the empty moors. But the game is eternal. The taxi rattled down the drive, and Hercule Poirot, mustache impeccable, allowed himself one small, satisfied sigh. Order and method had prevailed, for now.